When my phone rang, I already knew what was coming. "I'm divorcing you, Danielle." Mark's voice was calm, calculated. "And I've sold the company. New beginnings, new partners, nothing personal." I could hear the smug satisfaction in his tone, as if he had just executed the perfect business deal. I took a breath, steadying my voice. "Good for you, Mark." I ended the call and smiled, knowing something he didn't. While he had been scheming his exit, I had been orchestrating my takeover. By the time I arrived home, his confidence was oozing through his posture, legs sprawled across the couch like a king surveying his domain. Beside him, Emma, his fresh-out-of-business school mistress, stood with a victorious smirk. "I assume you got my message," he said, swirling a glass of whiskey. I dropped my briefcase onto the coffee table, pulled out a stack of legal documents, and slid them toward him. "You might want to read these." Mark's grin faltered as his eyes scanned the paperwork. "What the hell is this?" "The company sale isn't valid," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Because as of last week, I own 75% of Knight and Wallace Enterprises. And that sale you so carefully orchestrated?" I let my words hang. "It's null and void." Emma took a nervous step forward. "That's not possible." Mark says a lot of things," I interrupted, pulling out another document. "Like how he tried to transfer $650,000 to an offshore account 3 days ago." His face went white. "How? You always underestimated me, Mark." I stood, gathering my papers. "But that was your first mistake. Your second? Assuming I didn't keep receipts?" As I walked away, I heard Emma whispering furiously at him. The game had just begun. That night, I met with my legal team. "Are we sure we have everything?" I asked, scanning the files before me. "Every unauthorized transaction, every offshore account, every falsified business deal," my lawyer, James, confirmed. "Mark's been siphoning company funds for years." I nodded. "And the board?" "Tomorrow's emergency meeting is set. We'll have full support." By morning, Mark was drowning in bad news. The SEC had launched an inquiry into his financial records, shareholders were in an uproar, and his grand exit strategy had collapsed overnight. As I walked into the boardroom, all eyes were on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, setting down a thick folder, "we have a lot to discuss." Mark stormed in moments later, sweat beading on his forehead. "You don't have the right—" "I have every right," I interrupted smoothly. "You, on the other hand, no longer have access to company accounts. Security has been notified." He turned to the board. "You can't let her do this." One of the senior executives, Linda, leaned forward. "We already did, Mark. You're out." The fallout was immediate. News of Mark's fraud spread like wildfire. Clients pulled their contracts, investors distanced themselves, and Emma? She had already moved on. I watched from my office as Mark's name was scrubbed from the company records. My assistant handed me a note. "Federal agents just arrived at his penthouse." "Perfect timing," I murmured. The SEC investigation unearthed even more. Mark had been involved in multiple fraudulent investments, and his offshore accounts were linked to illegal transactions. My phone buzzed with a message from our cybersecurity team. "Mark just attempted to access company servers. Denied." I leaned back, a sense of finality settling over me. Checkmate. The next morning, I stood before a crowd of reporters outside our headquarters. "With integrity and perseverance, Knight and Wallace will continue forward," I declared. "We are stronger than ever." Mark was nowhere to be seen. His empire, his reputation, his future, it was all gone. As I stepped back inside, my assistant handed me a final document, Mark's official resignation. I signed it with a flourish, knowing that, in the end, he had played his game well, but I had played it better. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's taking back what was yours all along.